Welcome, everybody, to this JMC 2021 Minnesota EdVi onboarding Q&A session. This is the first follow-up session to our first Minnesota EdVi onboarding session for the 2021-2022 school year. This is our third year in a row that we've been onboarding new schools. And before we get to the Q&A, I want to tell you that I want to make sure that people know that I missed a part of the presentation because we got so into it and I was so into thinking about it, I forgot to show folks the appendix. We were talking about the appendix throughout much of the training, but the appendix is way at the end, and I will link it in this particular presentation. It'll be the only link on the YouTube channel for here underneath the description here. But the appendix has all the things that you need for your error reporting here. So what I would do is when you get to using or going through the onboarding process, I would have this downloaded and ready to go. And if you run into some errors or things like that, first consult the appendix, because that's what it's there for. We put it all in one spot. It's a little different than last year. We had sprinkled out throughout. And so we thought this year, let's put it at the end. Let's see. So for example, yikes, I received a 400 error. Typically these are data communication errors. Okay, I'm actually gonna, so this might actually answer some people's questions right away. 400 error, right? What do? Try clicking the Minnesota EdVi update students by grade level button again to resubmit your data for this grade level. I mean that people will get this 400 error. It means that for some reason you're not communicating with the MDE internet or whatever it might be. No problem. Just go in, click that again, and that will typically resolve that for you.
Can we add to that, Paul?
Yeah, go ahead.
What this issue actually is that and everybody will get this, the first time you send data into staging or to production, you will get 400 errors for pretty much all your students. The reason is it's a chicken and an egg thing. There's no data there yet. And so when we start sending data, EdVi sends a thing back that basically says, well, this kid doesn't exist. There's no data here for him, even though we're sending it. So that's why the first time you send data in staging and you get a bunch of 400 errors, or when you go to production, just do the same, like Paul said, just run it again. There will be data there, so that error will go away. So you will get this, guaranteed.
Absolutely. Great. Oh, I'm starting to panic. I guess see a 403 error for the majority of my students on both my reports. No biggie. It means your JMC school calendar is more than likely not set up correctly. We've had this before too last year. People maybe only set up the first and last day, but don't set up the term dates or something like that as well. Well, what do you need to do? It's in the doc here. You can review this video, enter the correct term dates as outlined in the Mars fall submission instructions. Repeat steps 1 through 4 of updating students by grade level. So in the previous video, the onboarding, we walked you through updating your calendar. We're also going to do it in the Minnesota Mars training next week. But if you get a 403 error, do you just, got a 403 error? That means that my calendar is not correct. Go in, make sure your calendar is correct. Make sure all the term dates are in there as well, that there's no errant term dates, and then resubmit and go do your update students by grade level.
Right, and the one piece of that we're talking about is one of the first things the very first step after you upload Mars, the first step for doing, and you've got Mars error free, the first step of doing EdVi, step number 2 in the thing is update calendar.
Yep.
So you go to the start year and the general tab, and you go to the update calendar. That sends all of your calendar info for all your buildings into the MDE, and so it doesn't have a good calendar. Yep. So Minnesota EdVi start year and tables, or excuse me, the general tab.
Yep.
There it is, the one button that sends all your calendar stuff. Again, that's like step 2. That's the very first step after you've uploaded Mars and your Mars is error free, and you're going to start the process to report EdVi as you go here every time and upload your calendar, because it can change. Yep. As you get no school days or whatever it is, your calendar can change. As you add more students, well, you got to upload the calendar, make sure all those students are covered. Or you only had KA and KB on your grade 0 subgroups the first time you sent it. Now you've added a KC group. Well, you've got to do this because you got to upload the calendar for that KC group. So very important.
Great. Awesome. All right. Then next is, if I'm getting this error, student identifying information given does not match any students. This is occurring because the student is not in the MDE EdVi system yet, And so since the new students in your district are not in your staging environment, the MDE recommends ignoring these errors for now and addressing them when you move into production. So just again, if you get this one right here, something, and usually it's this language, can be something very similar. Student identifying information given does not match any students. It's because it's like the chicken and the egg thing, like Eric was saying before. The student is not in the EdFi data. So saying, oh, that kid's not here. You're the first one to be sending that data. You can ignore those per the MDE. They're telling us, MDE says, hey, just ignore that during staging. When we get to production, and then there'll be student data in there, that will be easier to rectify at that time.
And here's the issue on this one. Staging environment has last year's data.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
So the staging environment doesn't have 21, 22 data. Why is that? Because you haven't sent any in yet. They don't have any info. So the only data they have is from your school from last year. So the staging environment has last year data, which means any new students that just came to your school this year, they're not going to be in the staging environment. So when you send their data in through staging, it'll say, we don't recognize this student. We can't match the student up to any of your data. Makes sense. They weren't in your data last year. You can ignore those because when you start sending data into production, you're starting from scratch. So it's not even going to look for those. You're telling them which students you have. And it also, you're already uploading Mars data. So those kids are in your Mars data. So it will go away once you hit the production environment.
Great. I'm getting an error about invalid characters in a student's name. Most likely there's a period in the student's middle name. We saw this a few times last year. You'll have to go to your edit student data and remove the period from the student's middle name in the middle field. They just don't allow it. So if you're getting an error about a student's name, it's most likely because they have a period in the middle name. That's just not allowed at this time with EdFi. And I'm getting an error about missing or incorrect ancestry information. Most likely a field was left empty. So you have to go to the edit student data, click on the race ethnicity tab to enter missing information for that student. So again, if you get an error about ancestry information, right, which a lot of people are collecting that information right now, you'll have to go to that race ethnicity and add in any ancestry information or whatever it's directing you to here. So check that for your students.
This is one that I think is still in staging. I think it's still in the coding for staging so that you can catch those. I don't believe this coding is in anymore in production. It's not going to come back and tell you that you're missing race ethnicity data because we found towards the end of last year, at least second half of second semester, that this error wasn't being sent back to schools. They would find it when they did their, it wouldn't even show up in comparison because this is data only sent via EdFi. I'm not really sure how they found this. I mean, they would look at, I think when they did their Mars West for EdFi data, it's being pointed out that these students, and only certain ones, if the student has the white box checked or the Hawaiian Pacific Islander box checked, they don't need the ancestry data on the right. All the other ones do. And so if you have Hispanic Latino checked and you don't have ancestry data on the right, it will, and again, I believe it's in the Mars West process, EdFi Mars West, not Mars, because Mars, you don't report this in Mars, it's only EdFi. And I think that's how they were catching it. But it used to send an error back saying, hey, you're missing race ethnicity data, but they quit doing that. I don't know why.
Got it. Great. Right. And oops, I reported a student both Mars and EdFi that I shouldn't have reported at all. That's a simple fix that only takes a few steps to correct. You'll go to Minnesota, and we talked about this last time, Minnesota EdFi delete student, find the student and delete them from the EdFi portal, then uncheck their Mars flag. So this one's pretty straightforward, right? You know you need to uncheck Mars because you want to report them at Mars, and also you need to delete them from EdFi. So this is something, if somebody's accidentally reported, maybe you have the same student in there twice or something like that, then you go and delete them from EdFi and uncheck their Mars flag.
This one is huge. You don't, if you had a Mars box checked on a student, and with Mars, it is simple. Mars, every time you upload a new Mars file, it replaces the old one. So if you reported a student last time in your Mars and you did it by accident, you could just uncheck the Mars file when you create new Mars files, the Mars box. And when you create new Mars files and upload, it just replaces what was there before. EdFi doesn't do that. EdFi, when you send data in, that data is there. until you tell the system to remove it. So if you have a student that you accidentally check the Mars box, number one, please do not delete them from JMC. If you delete them from JMC, at some point when it shows that this student was reported and shouldn't have, you'll have to put the student back into JMC, check their Mars box, go to this spot that Paul's pointing out, Minnesota EdFi delete student, find the student, click the button, it will go out and remove them out of your data, your EdFi data. At that point, you can then uncheck the Mars box so he doesn't get reported in Mars again and won't be sent via EdFi. So this is huge. One of the biggest things you need to make sure you do is make sure that only the kids being reported have the Mars box checked. You've got to make sure that that's big, or you're going to have to go back and do this delete student process. It's also big because we had one school last year who had a whole bunch of kids, hundreds of kids with the Mars box checked. They went in and deleted all those kids, which was fine for Mars, but then those hundreds of kids were stuck in EdFi. They ended up having to go back in and put them back into JMC and run through this process. There is no mass ability to just say, well, go and remove all these kids. Nope, the MDE doesn't have one. There isn't a place you can log into your MDE, pick these kids and say delete. It all has to come from the SIS, and we don't have one. The delete should be only done one student at a time, because we hope you're only going to have, oh, I missed one, or I missed one here, I missed two there. Well, I can easily take care of that. So very big. Don't report kids. Make sure that you don't report kids that shouldn't be reported.
Yep, check to make sure that correct kids have their Mars flag, and those ones that don't have the Mars flag, check that absolutely. Great. And that's it. So that was that's in the appendix. That will be I'm going to post with this presentation, even though it's the Q&A one. I'm not going to post the Q&A slides because there's nothing in there for you that's helpful. I'll post these EdFi onboarding slides again, and all those great Q&A items are listed at the end in the appendix. So if I was going through and doing mine, I would look at this, I'd have the appendix ready to go with you as well. So now I actually have one question, and then we're going to get to my slides. So this was actually sent in by Allison, and she said, our tech person just updated JMC. We now have the SPED history tab. This is one for you, Eric. I didn't know what to say. Okay, but they don't have the program history tab. Do you know why that would be, Eric?
You won't have a program history tab to import program history.
Got it. Got it. So,
and also you would not, if you don't have the whole system turned on.
Sure.
Well, so if you haven't gone in and turned everything on like we went through last time under File Administrator Options, EdFi Settings, turn everything on, get everything going, there isn't going to be a program history tab, because the people that aren't doing EdFi don't need a program history
tab.
Got
it. Got it. That's great. Good to know. Thanks for that. All right. Okay. Oh, and Allison sent that in. Thanks, Allison. I appreciate that. So that was good. That's why I told Allison, I'll tell folks just, sometimes that, hey, if you email a question in, I'll actually say, please bring it to the session, because I want other people to hear as well. And truth be told, right, Eric and I, and sometimes clients, right, we are all learning a little bit together. We're for sure, we got a good handle on this, but when sometimes those questions come up, we want everybody to hear the answers to those questions. So great job, Allison. All right. So let me go back to I've got some guided questions here that I will go through here. Oh, introductions. I'm Paul. Sorry, I got right into it. I was so darn excited. I'm Paul from JMC, lead trainer, and I've got Eric Doy with me, the lead tech support person at JMC as well. So I'm going to ask some guided questions first that people can pipe in on. And then if there's questions that we didn't go about, we will take any questions. But I like to do the guided ones because get people thinking. So does anyone have any questions about creating and uploading a Mars A and B file? Now would be the time to type it in. I will tell you that again, if you have anything to do with Mars at all in JMC, and I like to talk while people are typing questions in. You might know that if you've been part of my training sessions before, so you can be typing. But if you're part of anything to do with Mars, you want to make sure to attend, and I'm on the JMC office home screen here, this Minnesota State Reporting Roundup from 1 o'clock to, actually it's going to be, I lengthened the time. It's 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock on Thursday, August 19th, because the MDE wanted some extra time as well. I'm assuming they're going to discuss some things about EdFi. So anybody that touches or says the word Mars in your school or EdFi, I would attend this. Now, we're not doing EdFi at this session, just so you know it's focused on Mars. But I would attend that session, sign up for it. It's very popular. The 4 people are going to be doing small presentations from the MD, including also in addition to yours truly. All right, so no questions about uploading Mars AB files. Second, are there any questions about the process of using the MDE ESCT tool to generate your key and secret and then entering them into your JMC EdFi settings page? So any questions about EdFi settings, knowing that you use on the MDE side, that's how you get your ECST. That's where you go to generate your key and secret, and then you copy and paste them into to JMC. So that's all there is to it. You know, Eric, I did have one person email me a question, then they said they figured it out. But she said, "Hey, am I supposed to get an email from my sys once I set my sys in the on the MDE side?" And I said, "I'm not sure, but I think that's all MDE. We don't send them an email
No,
to confirm. No, okay,
no,
that's what I thought. So that's why she
it's
must have
all
got something.
MDE end stuff. So
Yep,
the key thing is the MDE end, if it's set up correctly, you'll have no issues with the JMC end.
yep,
Because everything has to be set up there. You plug all the stuff into JMC and data will flow. So
absolutely, great,
that's how you know it's working. Data is
absolutely,
flowing and you're not getting weird errors about authentication token, etc.
yep, great." All right, 3. Did anyone receive any errors during the start year steps they were not able to resolve? So the start year steps, right? Just to remind folks, and you can start to type them in now. So under, oh, I will also tell you that I wanted to point out, oh shoot, that I want to, Allison told me, uh, or did somebody tell me that we're in staging part right now, that you present it all in one day so we can get step B, step and fresh exam. So I just want to tell you that they got their staging part all set up. Good job to Allison and Minneota. Don't email me I'm just, you're thinking now, oh gosh, Paul's going to highlight somebody a week. I am not. But really great. Saw it in one day, got the staging set up. So Eric, how does that make you feel?
That's good.
Yep.
The one thing I try to make sure I tell you is don't get stressed out about this.
Yeah.
Because guess what? I know that the MDE is saying you got to get EdFi done, got to get EdFi done. Mars is more important.
Yep.
At this point. Mars is still what they take all the data from. That's how you get your paid for your students. That's how everything goes. So if you're feeling stressed to try to get all this EdFi stuff set up, make sure that your Mars is good first. There's no reason to even try to send EdFi data until you've uploaded Mars till it's error free, because that's step 1. That's what we've always talked about. You upload Mars, you go into your Mars WES, you fix your errors, you keep doing that till it's error free, then you upload it to the MDE. At that point, you're ready to do EdFi. So, and if you're struggling with that, don't worry about EdFi, because you're really going to struggle if your Mars isn't error free. It's a waste of time, because Mars has to be error free before you start doing EdFi. Because again, what we talked about, we're basically we're sending the same data as you are Mars, but we're sending it a different way. That way, you then, if you send Mars again a second time at the end, the data's the same and you can compare to see what's not correct. And what we've normally seen is, like we talked about last time, is people don't upload their most current Mars file, and then all of a sudden the comparison report is off because you're sending current EdFi data via EdFi, but the Mars, you send an old Mars file. Well, that's not going to work at all. So just make sure that your Mars is good, because that's the important data. And then once you're comfortable, start doing the EdFi, get through staging. Because again, staging is not, you're not supposed to be in staging long. You're supposed to be in staging just to make sure data is flowing and you know how to read the reports at the MDE. You then contact the MDE and say, hey, I think I'm ready for staging. They will verify. I mean, I'm ready for production. They'll verify and tell you when you're ready for production, and then we'll move on from there. So
Absolutely. And that's when new people who have said, hey, I'm new to Mars and EdFi. Where do I get my EdFi training? The first thing I say is, don't even worry about that, right? Because as Allison has pointed out, right, you can get these steps done in a day, right? Focus on your Mars, get your Mars done, make sure you're error free. Then you can move on to this, because just all you got to do is follow the steps. So, all right. So I guess there's not any questions about the start year part. So let's go to topic number 4. Are there any program or special education history records that you need guidance updating? Well, somebody, so that when you updated, right, when you come here and you you go to the students and you update your students by grade level, right? You will update that and you might get some messages, right? Remember we said last time, many messages are saying, hey, we just updated the information and created a record. Some said, hey, some information needed to be added in. If you've got any in there, that program history records or special education history records that you need help with, let us know. But I've got a question that came up here. It says,
Oh, and I'm going to add something before you answer this question, Paul.
oh, gotcha.
Uh, there is an issue with the special education history records. If you've got a different type of setup in your school, in other words, if your school is just regular, let's say you have a high school and you have an elementary, and you report one school number from one building and one school number from another, you won't have an issue. It'll work just fine. But let's say you have a single building and you report 3 different school numbers from that building, one for the elementary, one for the middle school, one for the high school. We are fixing an issue with that where it's reporting too many special ed records. And so if you're a school like that, or if you have a school where in one building, your elementary building, you're reporting 2 different school numbers from that same building, same thing. It's trying to create too many records. That should be fixed here in the next week or so. So if you're one of those schools that does that, hold off on doing any EdFi, and especially importing program history and special ed, because you will have an issue. But again, if you're just a regular school, you have one elementary in JMC, one high school in JMC, they have different separate numbers, you won't have an issue, you can move on.
Great.
I see that, did the question go away? Was that
I typed the answer. Nope, it was a different one.
Okay, I wasn't paying attention. Sorry.
Yep, no worries. No. Today we received any messages or errors while updating grade level data they were not able to resolve. So any errors or messages that people got there that are like, oh, why does it say this? And I think, Eric, as people might type these in, we've gotten better also at presenting, right? The first year we were like, oh, hey, everybody, you're going to get a lot of messages that don't need to be updated, right? And then but now we know, like when people look at all those messages, like, holy cats, what do I do with all those? Well, you ignore most of them because they don't need to be updated. You only take care of the ones that need to be updated. And actually, I'm going to bring up that presentation here because
well, and we fix those messages, because a lot of times what you'll find is the messages come back and to you they're gobbledygook.
Yep.
There's some of them we can't really change the verbiage, but a lot of them we can. So when we get a certain gobbledygook message back and we figure out what that means, because these error messages really aren't JMC error messages. These are MDE error messages.
That's
and
correct.
So what we can do is we can take it when we get a certain message into our system, we can then match it up to a real world wording that we show you. So it could say something like, some gobbledygook with ancestry. Well, we can change it and say this student's ancestry information is wrong.
Or
so
missing.
It's more of a real world message that you can understand, and you can just go and find it, see it. So we will continue to do that as we go also.
And if there's one thing I want to stress, Eric, and I do it, and I can hear you do it too, we're using the term error messaging, but they're not errors actually. It's just messages, right? Telling you that either something was created here or something needs to be updated, because the idea that an error message is there instills in me, and I could be different than everybody else, but it's like, oh, I need to do something. But with a lot of these, you don't need to do them. But JMC does a great job. Eric and his tech team in particular, Eric and Randy and Joe and the crew, work hard with our programming team to make sure that when we get these messages in that aren't recognizable by a client, we try to change them and edit them in some way to make them recognizable so you can fix your own errors.
Yeah, and I'd say the same thing, Paul. Some of them are errors, and they'll clearly say that. Make sure that you read whatever's coming in and see, is this something informing me something and informing me to do something, like this page? This page is telling you what was created, which records need to be updated, or is it an actual error? And if it's an error, read it and see, oh yeah, I know how to fix that. I can fix that. So we need you to try. Sometimes we've had some people who just get these messages, don't even look at them, send them in to us. Make sure you try to fix them yourself. And then if you can't fix them, send it into our ticket system.
And the real reason we want you to try, because we always want to help folks, is that you're going to be dealing with these forever. This is the new way that you're going to be receiving those messages. So if we want you to know, and that people want to be empowered, right? I think sometimes people get scared, like, oh, this is new. I'm nervous. I'm scared. But like Eric said, you don't need to be. And the quicker that you can become comfortable understanding these messages, the more comfortable you're going to be if you just take the time to look through them and understand them as best you can and reach out to tech support if you can't understand one in a month after you've done this once or twice, when you see these messages come up, you're like, oh, great, just going to take care of them, just like you did in Mars, only it's going to be easier. And here's one of the beautiful things, and I know this from working from Wisconsin and Nebraska as well, is that instead of waiting until the end of the year to get a message or whatever it might be, or once every 2 months, or whatever, you can send data in and you can fix them in the moment instead of having to wait till the end of the month or 2 months or 3 months, because that's when the data is fresh in your mind.
And then I also want to add that make sure that you follow the steps every time, the same steps every time. People get into trouble when they don't think that they have to update their calendar every time, or I can skip import program history. Well, you really can't. The first time you import program and special ed history, guess what? You're going to get a ton of records because it's brand new. There's nothing in there. And you might get a whole bunch that you have to change. But after that, those records are already there. So the only things that are going to get imported are new ones, and those don't come in so much. So there's a lot of times, but you still have to do it because you got to follow the steps every time. So the people that we've had in the past that have struggled are the ones that skip steps. And then we find out, well, no, I didn't do that step. Well, you have to do that step. So make sure you follow the steps every time in the same order, and then just get yourself disciplined on that, and then things will work.
Yep, absolutely. And also, friends from Freshwater District said I did have a mistake on the other slide that says when you set the date, which is here, you want to set it. I accidentally have the 22 in here, but you want to put the 6/1/21 in here, and I will update this slide for the next item there. Thank you for pointing that out again. But 6/1/2021, that's the date that you want. 6/1/2021. Yep. Great. And I see, oh yeah, you're pointing out right here. That says the date there, but it should say 6/1/2021. All right. So any other questions that we can help people with about their JMC Minnesota EdFi onboarding? It sounds like I said, I've gotten some, Eric, I don't know if you know, but I've gotten some emails from the webinar sent out, people saying like, I'm on track. I've got the stuff, the ones I've got a charter school in the Twin Cities that said, hey, I've got my, I use the ECST tool and I registered JMC as my thing. Like, great, right? That's the great stuff there. So,
and I know I said this before, but I really want to emphasize: don't stress yourself out over this EdFi stuff, because if you're struggling because you're really busy this time of year and you haven't even had time to send your Mars in, and then you send your Mars in, you haven't had time to fix them. Don't worry about EdFi, because again, if Mars isn't right, if Mars isn't error-free, you're wasting your time sending EdFi, because guess what? It's going to have errors too if you don't fix your Mars. That's why we tell you to do your Mars error-free first, because then when you send your EdFi, hopefully it will be error-free. Or if there are a few, changes that need to be made, there won't be much. So you don't want to, make more work for yourself. So if that means that you're not going to be comfortable starting till, September, fine. That's up to you. We just wanted you to have the instructions. If you're comfortable getting started now, go ahead. Also, you can sign up for some of our other onboarding sessions. We have 3 or 4 more. So if you came to this session, you don't have time to get started on EdFi, and you get to the middle of September and you're ready, sign up for the September one and come back to the training again and then go through it or watch the video. So it's really, we want you to be comfortable and ready to report this on your time frame so that you don't do too much work and you're getting it done efficiently.
Yep. And another question actually came in that was emailed to me and said, hey, are all the train sessions the same? They are all virtually the same. Meaning, when I say virtually, right, is I've got to swap out a couple screenshots, but they are exactly the same. So you wouldn't need to attend another one unless you wanted to, but the Q&A sessions people can find to be very helpful. All right, another question from Ms. Breifogel says, just to clarify, should we wait until next week when MDE has Mars West open for 21-22 to upload files before starting the staging?
Yes, I would say that you would. I mean, you want to probably clarify that with the MDE, but if you can't send Mars files and then go into Mars West and fix your errors yet, there's really no reason to be doing any of the EdFi stuff, because you're going to have errors then. You'll have errors because, I don't think anybody sends stuff in the first time and doesn't have issues. So our first step is always sending your Mars first, go into Mars West, get your data fixed, keep doing that till Mars is error free before you do any of the steps in EdFi, because it will save you a lot of time. I mean, do you have to? No, but you're setting yourself up to, have a lot of frustration.
More errors to fix. Yeah. And that's, I'm glad you brought that up, Allison, again, because last year we intentionally didn't start people until October, November to this process so that they could get through their Mars reporting. Well, this year the state is putting their pedal to the metal, right? And so we want to, of course, be supportive in that and their goals. And so we're also thinking through those things as well. So Eric's advice is sage advice. Do your Mars first. You could go to the MDE site, right, and get your key and secret set up and make sure JMC's marked as your SIS. That would be no problem whatsoever. But I think Eric's right. Like, I would wait until you get as much of your Mars A and B files error-free as you can, and then move into the staging. But hopefully you've seen from the presentation we did last Monday that the steps are laid out. Just go ahead and you can knock them out in a day, Allison.
And I would recommend, like what Paul said, Paul said, make sure your MDE site is set. You've got JMC defined as your SIS, you've got your key and secret. Go into JMC and get the EdFi settings all set up. And then go in, Paul, if you want to pull up that Minnesota EdFi start year, do that stuff, because that would verify whether, so if you go in, so you get your EdFi settings set up and you go in here to test them, you check your boxes, you go to the tables tab and you start running these buttons. You do this because this is a great test to see if those settings are set correctly. Because if you click the first button and it comes back and it downloads everything and tells you it was successful and shows you all the stuff, your EdFi settings are good. So you're good to go. So you can download all of these, because guess what? These you only do once a year. The first time you get it set up every year, you're downloading stuff from the MDE into your JMC. You do it one time. So you do it one time, it verifies that your EdFi settings are good. And then you can just kind of stop, because if you're ready. If Mars West isn't ready, I've set up my EdFi is ready to go. I'm set. I'm good to go. And so now I can just wait and start working on my Mars. And until I'm done with my Mars being error-free, I know my EdFi settings are set, and I know that the other things are going to work when I'm ready.
Yep, because the tables is bringing stuff in from the state, not going to give you any errors. It's when you go to the general that you're sending stuff to the date, and when you update students to the grade level, that's sending stuff to the date. So just to affirm what Eric's saying, you come in here, this is bringing stuff down from the state, not going to produce any errors. The only error you might get is it's saying that you're not connected. It's not going to be any Mars A and B file connected, like those types of errors.
It's going to tell you if you get the authentication token error that your key and secret is wrong, or if you get the error about the vendor, then you haven't assigned JMC as your vendor. And so that at that point, there's things on the MDE end that you don't have right, and you can go get those fixed.
Yep.
Hey guys, is the MDE still saying that 2022 is the actual year when they make the cut from Mars to EdFi?
That's their goal. Absolutely.
You have to ask them. Yeah. I'm thinking yes. I'm not going to try to prognosticate on that. That's a big goal. The reason I think it's a big goal is because we as JMC this will be our third year, we still don't have anybody doing EdFi only. And that's 70 some schools. They're still doing EdFi and Mars at the same time. So it'd be hard. That's still what they're saying, is that next school year, you'll be doing EdFi only. We'll see. We'll just see how it goes this year. Because I have a feeling that the other SIS companies are just like us. The majority of their schools, they still have to onboard this year. And so we'll see how that all goes. But we'll let the MDE make that official call.
And we're ready to do whatever. We support whatever. We've got as you can tell, we got the slides, we got the resources, we got it all ready in JMC. Great. Any other questions from folks? Great questions, great conversation. You can watch your JMC office homepage for the upcoming EdFi sessions. I think it's September 15th, something like that is the next one that we're going to do as school starts here in Minnesota. Things get really busy for everybody. Our training teams on the road, onboarding lots of new schools and things like that as well. So great. Great. Allison said a great question. I think everybody can see it. So it says, I'm glad you were with JMC. We are too, Allison. You guys are awesome, even for old dinosaurs like me. Listen to you, Allison. Old dinosaurs like you. Cracking me up, right? Absolutely. Well, I guess I will wait another minute to see if anybody has any other questions. If not, we'll wrap it up. I will be posting this video to YouTube. I'm actually going to create, just so everybody knows, a playlist on our YouTube channel. Just be 2 videos. It'll be the video from Monday and this video. And so folks can go there and make sure that they watch both the videos. I think both these are really imperative to, the last one is kind of the nuts and bolts, and this one is error correction and Eric's emphasis on where your energy and your time should be going. So we appreciate everybody's time. We appreciate everybody choosing to go through this process with us, and we hopefully it helps give you an idea of where you're going this year and in the future with the EdFi reporting. So thank you, Eric Doyle, for joining us. Thanks, Brett Joyce, for joining us. Thanks, Allison, for helping ask those questions. And everybody have a great day.